The bridge of the USS Enterprise D hummed with familiar efficiency, the soft pulse of L-THAR's consoles, the low thrum of the warp engines, and the occasional chirp of sensor readouts. Captain Jean-Luc Picard sat in his command chair, surveying a routine charting mission in a quiet sector with calm attentiveness. Around him, the senior staff carried out their duties. Commander Riker exchanged a dry quip with Counselor Deanna Troi. Lieutenant Worf monitored tactical sensors with disciplined focus, and Lieutenant Commander Data methodically catalogued spatial phenomena at the science station. It was a scene of ordinary Starfleet exploration, the crew poised for anything yet expecting nothing out of the ordinary. Without warning, the ordinary shattered. An alarm blared at Worf's station, and the Klingon's deep voice cut through the calm. Captain, detecting a subspace distortion directly ahead. Picard snapped to attention, eyes on the main view screen. In an instant, the tranquil starfield was replaced by a roiling aperture of light. Space itself twisted violently as a tear in the fabric of reality formed off the Enterprise's bow. Data's hands flew over his console, analyzing in real time. Source of the anomaly unknown, Captain. Energy signatures are fluctuating across multiple spectra. This does not correspond to any known natural phenomenon. Picard rose from his seat, heart quickening. Red alert, shields up, he ordered evenly. The view screen flared, a blinding white-purple light spilling outward. Suddenly, someone was flung out of the rift. A dark silhouette tumbled in the vacuum before the ship. Magnify, Picard commanded. The image zoomed, a humanoid figure, drifting unconscious in open space without a suit. For a heartbeat, the bridge crew stared in disbelief. No ordinary human could survive unprotected in hard vacuum. Yet sensors showed faint life signs. Tractor beam now, Riker barked. But Data was already one step ahead. Captain, initiating an emergency transport. I have a lock on the life form, came Chief O'Brien's voice over comms from transporter room. Picard tapped his comm badge. Picard to Dr. Crusher. Medical emergency. Humanoid retrieved from space. Prepare to receive in sickbay. Moments later, a pillar of shimmering transporter energy materialized in sickbay. Dr. Beverly Crusher, waiting with medics and a gurney, watched in astonishment as the figure coalesced. A man, short, powerfully built, clad in tattered combat gear, appeared and collapsed onto the bio bed. His attire was strange, torn yellow and blue uniform pieces and heavy boots, with odd clawed gloves on his hands. His face was rugged, framed by unruly dark hair. A bloody gash across his cheek was visibly knitting itself closed even as Beverly leaned in. He's alive, she murmured in relief, running a tricorder scan. What the reading showed made her breath catch. Bridge, this is Crusher, Beverly called, tapping her comm badge as nurses secured the unconscious stranger. You're not going to believe this, but he's alive, more than alive. On the bridge, Picard closed his eyes in quiet amazement at the update. Crusher continued, her voice edged with astonishment. His vital signs are stronger than any human I've ever seen. And Captain, his entire skeleton is laced with some kind of extremely dense metal. It's like nothing in our medical database. Data overheard through the open channel and interjected from Ops. Captain, sensors confirm Dr. Crusher's findings. The subject's body mass is approximately 135 kilograms, highly anomalous for a human of his size. I am detecting an exotic metallic alloy, accounting for roughly 45 kilograms of his mass. Marvel.com. Worf's brow ridges rose in surprise at that. The man weighed as much as a tall Klingon in armor. Despite appearing under 1.7 meters in height, Picard exchanged a look with Riker, an unidentified man, thrown through a subspace rift, laden with metal implants, and somehow surviving open space. This was no simple stray astronaut. Secure from red alert, Mr. Data. Maintain sensor sweeps for any further anomalies. Number 1, you have the bridge, Picard ordered, heading for the turbo lift. Counselor, with me. Troy followed, sensing the emotional currents in sickbay were about to become tumultuous. In sickbay's bright lights, Dr. Crusher hovered her tricorder over the patient's form, frowning at readings. The computer struggled to make sense of his physiology. Cellular regeneration rate is off the scale, she noted to Nurse Ogawa, who was assisting. Even as they watched, the stranger's bruises faded and cuts closed. "I'm administering a sedative," Beverly said, loading a hypo spray and pressing it to the man's neck with a soft hiss. The patient's heart rate, which had been elevated, began to steady. "That should keep him under until we know what we're dealing with." She gently cut away the remnants of his shredded uniform jacket. Underneath were more surprises. Dense muscles crisscrossed with old scar tissue, and 3 long, razor-sharp claws retracted within each forearm, revealed by deep but rapidly healing puncture wounds on the tops of his hands. "My God," Beverly breathed. She had to remind herself to stay objective. Whatever those claws were, biosynthetic implants, or something else, they appeared to extrude through the skin between his knuckles. Carefully, she extracted a small fragment of the metal from one of the closing wounds with a sterilizer probe. The sample gleamed silvery gray under sickbay's lights as she placed it on a scanner. The computer chimed, "Element unknown, molecular structure, stable, rigid lattice, hardness, off-scale." Beverly's eyes widened. Even diamond registered on their scans. But this alloy was tougher still. It was virtually indestructible by any conventional measure. An artificial metal that could cut through nearly any substance. Marvel.com. Picard and Troy arrived, just as Data's voice came over comms, analytical and calm. "Captain, the anomaly has dissipated. No further objects detected. Long-range sensors. Stand by." A pause. "Sir, I am reading residual quantum fluctuations consistent with a trans-dimensional rift. It is possible this individual originated from an alternate universe." Picard absorbed that revelation as he stepped to the biobed, gazing down at the unconscious man. Troy stood at the foot of the bed, hands clasped, her dark eyes focused on the patient's face. "What do you sense, Counselor?" Picard asked quietly. Troy frowned in concentration. "It's faint. He's heavily sedated. But I sense pain, Captain. Physical and emotional. It's pervasive. Even unconscious. He's suffering." Before Picard could reply, the stranger suddenly spasmed. Monitors pinged as his heart rate spiked. Dr. Crusher looked up in alarm. The man's metabolism was burning through the sedative far faster than expected. "He's coming out of it. This quickly. That dose would keep a Klingon unconscious for an hour," she said, incredulous. On cue, the patient's eyes snapped open. For a split second they were feral, golden brown and filled with confusion and rage. With an animalistic snarl, the man bolted upright, swinging his legs off the biobed. "Sir, you're all right. You're safe," Beverly began, holding her hands up placatingly. But the man, Logan, instinctively bared his teeth, a guttural growl emanating from deep in his chest. In a blur, 3 metal claws unsheathed from between the knuckles of each hand with a distinctive snicked. Troy gasped at the sudden spike of ferocity emanating from him. "Worf, who had accompanied the captain into sickbay and stood by the door, immediately drew his phaser. "Stand down," the Klingon barked, moving protectively between the volatile stranger and Captain Picard. Logan's senses were in overdrive. The sterile smell of antiseptics, the bright lights, the unfamiliar faces in uniform. It all screamed lab to him. Memories of past experimentation and captivity flooded his reeling mind. A red haze of survival instinct took over. In a flash, he lunged off the biobed onto the floor, landing in a low crouch, claws out. "Everyone back," Beverly warned, trying to keep her voice calm but firm. Picard raised a hand to signal the security guards to hold position. He kept his tone level and authoritative. "Nobody wants to hurt you. You're aboard the Federation Starship Enterprise. You are safe here." The words barely penetrated Logan's adrenaline-fueled state. His eyes darted, taking in exits and threats. Two gold-shirted security officers had their faces trained on him, hands trembling slightly. The big one by the door, Worf, smelled of controlled aggression, an odor Logan almost recognized as akin to predators he'd encountered, and behind Worf, a composed bald man, clearly in charge, stood with palms open, non-threatening but commanding authority. Logan's nostrils flared. The sense in the room was strange. The crisp cleanliness of technology, the subtle alien notes from Worf and Troy, none of it familiar. Not Weapon X, not Hydra, not any outfit I know, he thought, fighting through the confusion. His gaze swept across Troy, and he hesitated. Unlike the others, she radiated concern and empathy, an aura of reassurance that his animal instincts actually felt. Logan shook his head, trying to clear the red fog. His breathing was ragged, muscles coiled to strike, but uncertainty crept into his expression. Troy sensed the shift and spoke gently, stepping slightly forward. "We can feel your fear, your pain. Please, let us help you. We're not your enemies here." Her voice was calm, soothing, and it stirred something human in Logan. He realized his claws were out, and these people had not attacked, despite clearly seeing his weapons. The man in command had even told his security to hold fire. How many times had Logan woken in the lab to immediate restraints or violence? This was different. Through the haze, he forced himself to stand upright slowly, claws still extended, but lowered. His chest heaved as he struggled for control. Worf did not lower his phaser, but at a quiet nod from Picard, he held his ground, rather than advancing. The captain addressed the stranger again, voice steady. "Ian, Captain Jean-Luc Picard, you are aboard a Federation starship in neutral space. We mean you no harm." He took a single step forward. Logan's eyes snapped to him, every muscle tensing for a split second, as if ready to spring. But he held still, listening. Picard continued evenly. "You experienced an incident, a rupture in space-time. We brought you here to save your life." Logan's breathing began to slow, the wildness in his eyes dimming to wary suspicion. With a grimace, he retracted his claws. The razor-sharp blades slid back through the gaps in the skin on his hands, and the wounds closed almost immediately, leaving only torn fabric and bloodstains on his knuckles. Everyone in the room noticed this regenerative feat. Worf's eyes widened a fraction. The security officers exchanged astonished looks. Crusher's trick order, still in hand, pinged furiously at the biological data streaming in. "Incredible," she whispered. He healed from that in seconds. Logan finally spoke, voice gravelly and low, with an accent that to Picard's ear sounded North American. "Where am I?" he demanded. His posture was guarded, like a cornered animal ready to fight or flee. Picard inclined his head. "As I said, you're on the Starship Enterprise. I'm Captain Picard. This is my crew." He gestured calmly to each in turn. "Dr. Crusher, who treated your injuries. Counselor Troy. Lieutenant Worf, head of security. We found you unconscious in space after a subspace rift appeared. You were pulled through. Can you tell us your name and what you recall before you arrived here?" For a moment, Logan struggled to focus. The last he remembered, he'd been in battle, though the details were hazy. Flashes of combat flooded back, a blinding explosion of energy, chasing a foe through a collapsing portal. He couldn't piece it all together yet. His eyes flicked around at the unfamiliar technology. Alternate universe, the captain had said. Could be time travel or some teleporter snafu. But his instincts told him this was something bigger. Finally, he rasped out, "Name's Logan. Some call me Wolverine." He flexed his hands, as if the claws might come out involuntarily, just from recalling the fight. "I was fighting someone. I don't know what happened. Next thing I know, I'm here." Picard nodded slowly. The man's guarded tone and minimal information were noted. Clearly, Logan was used to withholding details. Data's voice then came through Picard's badge. "Sir, long-range scans show no sign of the source of the rift. However, I am detecting what appears to be debris consistent with advanced weapon signatures on the far side of the anomaly's last coordinates. It is possible there was a battle on the other side." Logan's face tightened at that, confirming Data's supposition. "Yeah, there was," he muttered. He ran a hand through his thick hair, visibly coming down from the adrenaline spike. Troy could sense his adrenaline levels dropping, and a wave of wariness and resignation beneath his stoic exterior. Picard maintained a respectful stance. "Mr. Logan, I understand you've been through an ordeal. We will do everything we can to help you. Perhaps even find a way to return you to where you came from. In the meantime, you have my word. You'll be treated as an honored guest and protected aboard this ship." Logan met the captain's eyes. In them he saw sincerity and discipline, reminding him oddly of another leader of men he once knew, Xavier. No, perhaps Captain America. The thought flitted briefly through Logan's mind. These Starfleet types, they had that straight-backed military bearing, but with a curious lack of aggression. It disarmed him more than any restraint could. Slowly, Logan nodded, appreciated. "Captain," his voice was rough but earnest. Beverly exhaled in relief and stepped closer, tricorder still scanning. "Logan, I'm Dr. Crusher. How are you feeling?" she asked, slipping into a gentle bedside manner. Logan gave a half shrug. "Been worse," he replied gruffly. He glanced at the medbay monitors showing his vitals. "I'm guessing you noticed I don't exactly have a normal body." A hint of wryness tugged at his lip. "Dr. Crusher allowed herself a small smile. One could say that your healing ability is remarkable. In fact, our scans indicate you have a regenerative healing factor far beyond normal human levels in .wikipedia.org. You metabolized a heavy sedative in minutes. She held up the tricorder display for him to see. Your physiology repairs injury almost instantaneously and neutralizes toxins or drugs with extraordinary efficiency. Logan only grunted in acknowledgement. None of this was news to him, but hearing it, stated so clinically, made Troy raise her eyebrows. Beverly continued softly, "Without that, I don't think you'd have survived even those few moments in vacuum. You were extremely fortunate." Logan wasn't so sure fortune had anything to do with it, more like his damned curse of immortality. But he kept that thought to himself. Instead, he lifted one hand and flexed his forearm. "You get a look at the metal, Doc?" he asked. "We did," Crusher answered, glancing at her analysis console. "I've never seen anything like it. The alloy bonded to your skeleton is, well, virtually indestructible from what our scans show. Even our surgical laser couldn't scratch that sample we took. It's some kind of fabricated metal that doesn't exist in our universe's periodic table." Data's voice chimed in from the doorway. He had quietly entered sickbay, drawn by scientific curiosity. "The metal appears to be an artificially created adamantium alloy, if I may use your universe's term," Data said, tilting his head. Logan's eyes narrowed at hearing the familiar word. Data continued, "It is extremely dense and resilient. By all indications, your entire skeleton has been reinforced with it, including retractable claws housed in your forearms. The tensile strength and sharpness of those claws likely allow you to cut through almost any known solid material marvel." "Come," Logan exhaled, a hint of dry humor in it. "You got that right." Worf, still standing nearby, regarded Logan now with open curiosity rather than hostility. The Klingon holstered his unused phaser. In his eyes, this small human who survived the vacuum of space and bristled with unbreakable claws was no mere victim. He was a fellow warrior of astonishing caliber. Worf gave a curt nod of respect. "It seems you have the heart of a Klingon, Logan," Worf said. "Few possess such an indomitable constitution." Coming from Worf, that was high praise. Logan glanced at him, surprised by the respect in the big alien's tone. "Thanks, I guess," he replied slowly. His feral instincts, while still on alert, had eased enough to realize he wasn't among enemies here. Troy, monitoring the emotional atmosphere, finally relaxed her tense shoulders. The immediate danger had passed. Now confusion, guarded hope, and deep wells of trauma swirled inside Logan. "Captain," Troy said softly, "perhaps we should let Logan catch his breath, and then continue this discussion in more comfortable surroundings." She worried that sickbay, with its medical confinement connotations, was keeping him on edge. Picard concurred. "Agreed, Mr. Logan. If you feel up to it, we can move to the observation lounge. There's much we'd like to understand, and I'm sure you have questions as well." Logan considered a moment. Part of him wanted to bolt, find an exit, and figure things out alone, but he was adrift in an alien world. Cooperation was likely his best bet for now. "All right, Captain," he said, standing to his full height. Beverly quickly stepped forward, scanning him one more time as a doctorly reflex. "No dizziness? Any difficulty breathing?" she asked. Logan gave her a lopsided grin. "Lady, I told you, I've been worse." True enough, he felt almost fully recovered, his body purging the last of the sedative and lingering ache from whatever beating he took before appearing here. Only his mind remained bruised, grappling with the reality of where he was. Picard gestured toward the doors. "This way." As they exited sickbay together, security escort discreetly a few paces behind. Logan walked under the stark lights of the corridor. Everything was pristine, futuristic, yet oddly inviting in its design. He'd seen high-tech facilities before, Weapon X labs, Sentinel factories, but nothing as clean and hopeful as this Federation starship. It felt less like a war machine and more like a traveling city of idealists. The thought made him almost uncomfortable. Too clean. These people haven't seen the dirt I've crawled through, he mused. Troy, beside him, sensed a spike of self-consciousness and despair from Logan, and her eyes softened. She could feel how out of place and unworthy he suddenly felt in these bright halls among such civil society. In the observation lounge adjoining the bridge, Logan found himself at a long conference table, windows on one side, revealing the starfield. Picard sat at the head, with Riker, Data, Worf, Dr. Crusher, and Counselor Troy taking seats along the sides. They were giving Logan space, literally. Nobody sat too close, an unspoken gesture of respect for the feral man's personal boundaries. Logan remained standing at first, gazing out at the unfamiliar stars beyond the glass. It struck him that he might be in an entirely different universe's sky. None of those constellations looked like home. The weight of that isolation hit him briefly, and he closed his eyes. He'd always been a drifter in his own world, alone even among teammates at times. But this was a new level of solitude. "Can I get you anything, Mr. Logan? Water? Food?" Picard offered kindly, noticing that behind the man's stoicism was likely fatigue and thirst. Logan shook his head. "I'm fine." Then, realizing that might be taken as ungracious, he added a gruff, "Thanks." He lowered himself into a chair, posture wary, but less tense than before. The senior staff studied their visitor in silence for a moment. Here he was, a legend of another reality sitting in their midst. His presence raised so many questions. Picard folded his hands on the table. "I know this must be overwhelming. We have never quite encountered a situation like this either. Alternate universes, yes, but rarely one with a single individual arriving under such violent circumstances." He kept his tone measured and
diplomatic, the consummate first contact approach. Perhaps you could tell us more about yourself, whatever you're comfortable sharing, so we can better assist you. Logan looked around the table at expectant, curious faces. Part of him bristled at the idea of explaining himself. He was used to guarding his identity. But another part, perhaps bolstered by the counselor's empathic calm, felt these people had earned some trust by saving his life. He took a breath. "I already told you my name." Logan, also called Wolverine. I'm a mutant. In my world. He glanced at their reactions. The term had no meaning to them. They simply listened. Mutants are humans born with an X gene that gives us special abilities. Mine. He raised a hand, flexing it. You saw the claws and the healing. That's my mutation. Makes me age slower too, I guess. I've been around a long time. He managed a half smile. As he said that, a smile that spoke of weariness more than humor. Data's eyes lit up with intrigue. Fascinating. You are essentially a different branch of human evolution. In our universe's history, there were no documented cases of naturally evolved mutants with such powers. Picard interjected thoughtfully. In our world, we have encountered genetically engineered humans and many alien species with innate abilities, but not exactly what you describe. Your kind must have had a profound impact on your society. Logan huffed. You could say that. It ain't always pretty. My world, it has heroes, villains, and a lot of people caught in between. I've fought in wars, both human wars and others. His voice trailed off as memories surged. Normandy, Vietnam, skirmishes against mutant hunting sentinels, cosmic battles alongside the X-Men. I've been a soldier, a lab experiment, a drifter. These days I mostly work with a team trying to keep the world from falling apart. Counselor Troy observed him intently. Every word he spoke carried undercurrents of regret and sorrow. You mentioned being an experiment, she said gently. Those metal bones, that wasn't part of your natural mutation, was it? Logan met her eyes, a flicker of pain crossing his face at her perceptiveness. No, my healing. It lets me survive things that would kill most folks. Some bad people took advantage of that. They laced my skeleton with this metal adamantium, forced it into me. It hurt. He left it at that. He didn't mention the brainwashing, the years lost in berserker madness. But Troy felt the raw wound behind those simple words and had to steel herself against the wave of anguish. She nodded softly. I'm so sorry. The table was silent for a moment. Even Worf looked sympathetic in his stoic way. Klingons respected suffering that one overcomes to become stronger. To move the conversation forward constructively, Riker spoke up, arms crossed thoughtfully. Logan, from what we gathered, you came through that rift in the middle of a fight. Were you pursuing someone, or were you escaping from danger? The first officer's question was practical, but also carried a hint of concern. If an enemy had caused that anomaly, the Enterprise might have more trouble incoming. Logan considered how to explain. There was a fight, he confirmed. A very powerful mutant. She had the ability to manipulate reality, I guess. We were trying to stop her from doing something catastrophic. I jumped at her as she opened some kind of portal, and next thing I knew, I was free falling through nowhere and ended up here. I doubt she followed me through. Probably didn't even know where she sent me. He frowned, hoping that was true. The last thing he wanted was someone like her showing up here because of him. Data exchanged a look with Picard. Captain, that suggests the rift could have been a one-time event, a byproduct of this other being's power. Picard nodded. Agreed. We might not be able to recreate it easily. He turned back to Logan. We will of course do everything in our power to find a way to send you home. Our chief engineer and science teams can analyze the residual quantum fluctuations and see if a return portal can be generated. Logan felt a mix of relief and anxiety at that thought. Going home. Yes, he wanted that. But he also imagined the sheer cosmic complexity of punching a hole between universes. Thanks. I appreciate it, he said quietly, voice gruff to mask the earnestness. He wasn't used to people bending over backward for him. Worf leaned forward slightly. Captain, if I may. Picard nodded for him to continue. Worf addressed Logan directly with a serious demeanor. While you are among us, you will be accorded the respect of a guest.
But know this, I am responsible for the safety of this ship. Should you threaten any member of this crew again, sedated or not, I will personally intervene. The Klingon's tone was firm, but not unkind. It was, in fact, more respectful than his usual address to outsiders. Logan met Worf's stern gaze. He almost smirked. The Klingon's protective stance reminded him of a certain metal-skinned Russian back home, who was always trying to keep him out of trouble. Fair enough, Logan replied. I've got no intention of hurting anyone who ain't threatening me. Sorry about the outburst, by the way. Waking up in a strange place, I tend to come out swinging. He nodded toward Dr. Crusher. No hard feelings, Doc. Beverly smiled reassuringly. None at all. I've had worse patients. A gentle chuckle went around the table, easing the tension. Picard took the moment to summarize, his diplomatic mind already considering implications. Well, Mr. Logan, until we can send you home, you are welcome to remain on the Enterprise. We will set you up with quarters and freedom of the ship within reason. I trust you'll cooperate with our regulations and crew. Logan nodded. You're doing me a big favor. I'll play nice. That earned a grin from Riker. The captain continued. I would ask that you refrain from using violence, except in self-defense or defense of this crew. Is that understood? Picard's voice held the authority of a man who expected his rules to be followed. Logan bristled inwardly at being given rules on how to fight, but he understood. Understood, Captain. Believe it or not, I don't go looking for fights. They just tend to find me. Counselor Troy interjected with a kind offer. If you need someone to talk to about the adjustment of being here, I'd be happy to help. I'm trained in psychology and xenopsychology. Logan managed a polite nod. Thanks, might take you up on that later. He wasn't keen on therapy. He'd walked out on more than one mandated psych session in the past, but there was sincerity in her eyes that he respected. As the meeting wrapped up, Picard stood. Data. See to the analysis of the anomaly data with Gordy. Counselor, please accompany Mr. Logan to some guest quarters, and then perhaps give him a tour so he can get his bearings. Mr. Logan. Logan. Picard shifted to a less formal address. You have nothing to fear here. We'll treat you as one of our own. If there's anything you need, just ask. Logan stood as well. He felt oddly touched by the captain's hospitality. It had been a long time since he'd experienced genuine hospitality without suspicion. Appreciated, Captain. Must say, your world, your ship, it's something else. He glanced again out the window at the stars, shaking his head. Didn't think I'd ever be this far from home. Picard gave a gentle smile. The universe has a way of surprising us. You're not the first person to find himself lost far from home on this ship. His thoughts briefly went to past beings like the Traveler, or even his own crew members flung through time and space. But rest assured, you're among friends here. With that, Picard gave a respectful nod and departed the lounge to return to the bridge, Riker and Worf following. Data lingered a moment, curiosity unabated. Mr. Logan, if it's all right, perhaps later I could discuss the specifics of your healing factor and anatomy, purely for scientific exchange, he asked with almost childlike eagerness. Logan chuckled low. The android reminded him, a bit of a science-minded teammate. Back home. Beast. Always curious. Sure, Professor. Maybe later. Data accepted the nickname without offense, understanding the illusion. I will look forward to it, he replied earnestly, then exited, leaving just Troy and Logan. Troy motioned to the door with a warm smile. Shall we? I'll show you to quarters where you can get cleaned up and rest. Logan glanced down at his torn, dirty attire. Still the shredded remains of his X-Men uniform under the borrowed Starfleet medical smock. I probably do need a shower, he admitted. They walked out into the corridor. As they strolled, Troy pointed out various facilities. A turbo lift here, a crew deck there, The ship's interior design struck Logan as almost utopian. Soft lighting, beige, and pastel tones, not the cold gray steel he was accustomed to on battleships or bunkers. It made him uneasy and comforted at the same time. They passed a few curious crew members in the hallway. A couple of off-duty junior officers gawped a second at the unfamiliar man with wild hair and mutton-chop sideburns, walking with Counselor Troy, but quickly returned to their business. Logan could hear their whispers after passing. That's him, the one from the anomaly. He tried to ignore it. Troy noticed and tried to reassure him. Don't worry, the crew is just curious. You're something of a minor celebrity already. Logan smirked. Great, never fancied myself a show pony. Troy laughed softly. I mean that in a good way. They're all rooting for you to find your way home. Her empathy was comforting, and Logan found himself lowering his guard around her more than he expected. Soon they reached a guest quarters. Troy tapped the panel, and the door swished open to a modest cabin. Logan stepped in tentatively. The quarters were small but well appointed. A neatly made bed, a sofa with a sleek glass coffee table, a replicator unit in the wall, and a desk with a terminal. It was far nicer than most places he laid his head back on Earth. I'll leave you here to freshen up, Troy said. But first, let me show you how to request things. She moved to the replicator. This is a replicator. It can provide food, drink, clothing, most basic necessities. She demonstrated by tapping the interface to access clothing options. The computer can fabricate garments. Perhaps you'd like something to change into. You may not want to keep wearing that. She eyed the tattered uniform and bloodstains.
Logan rubbed the back of his neck, a little overwhelmed by the technology. Handy gadget, sure. After a moment's thought, he smirked and said, Computer, give me a clean pair of jeans, boots, and a white t-shirt, my size. Troy's lips twitched with amusement as the replicator hummed and with a shimmer produced exactly that. A neatly folded pair of blue denim pants, black leather boots, socks, and a plain white tee. Logan let out a low whistle. Well, I'll be. He picked up the clothes, noting they even smelled fresh. Not bad. I'll step outside while you change, Troy offered politely. Is there anything else you need? Logan thought for a moment. A cigar, he half-joked. Troy tilted her head. She could sense his desire for some small comfort of home. But tobacco products weren't standard on a starship. I'm not sure the replicator is authorized for, well, unhealthy items. But I can see what I can do later, she said kindly. Logan chuckled. Don't worry about it. Just had to ask. After Troy left him to privacy, Logan stripped off the remnants of his ex-uniform and stepped into the small bathroom to wash up. As he peeled off the torn sleeves, he caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror. For a moment, he just stared. The face looking back at him was the same weather-beaten face he'd known for decades, lined with age that his healing factor could not completely erase, yet still appearing in his physical prime. His knuckles were caked with dried blood, Romulan blood now, though he didn't know it, from where his claws had cut in sickbay. With a tired sigh, he turned on the sink and splashed water on his face. What the hell have you gotten yourself into now, Logan? He wondered. Lost in a future world among idealists and explorers, it was almost laughable for a guy like him. He recalled Troy's words, "They're rooting for you." That notion was so foreign. In his own world, humanity often feared mutants like him. Even those who trusted him usually did so warily, knowing what he was capable of. But here he was an object of curiosity, perhaps even admiration. After mere hours, it was unsettling. He washed off the grime of battle and dried himself with the soft towel provided. The new clothes fit perfectly. Perhaps the computer had scanned his measurements. Donning the jeans, boots, and t-shirt, he felt a bit more like himself. Though looking in the mirror again, he noted the Starfleet comm badge still pinned to the tattered jacket on the floor, where he'd dropped it. Crusher had given it to him in sickbay, in case he needed to call for help. He picked it up and regarded it. A small delta-shaped badge with a gold and silver finish. The symbol of Starfleet. With a half smile, Logan affixed it to his new shirt. When in Rome, he thought, the sight of him, a scruffy brawler, wearing the pristine communicator of this utopian organization, was almost comical. But in a way, he felt oddly proud to wear it, even temporarily. Outside the door, Troy waited patiently. She was about to tap the chime to check on him, when the doors whisked open, and Logan stepped out. He looked more relaxed in casual clothes, though Troy noticed he still instinctively surveyed the corridor, like a vigilant predator. Feeling better? She asked. Logan nodded. Yeah, thanks for everything, counselor. They began walking as she continued his orientation tour. She took him through the corridors, pointing out important locations, a nearby turbo lift, the mess hall, though 10 forward lounge might be more his style, she thought, and planned to take him there later. As they walked, a couple of crewmen passed by and gave polite nods. Logan nodded back awkwardly. Social graces were not really his forte, but he could manage a nod. Troy decided to broach a delicate subject as they walked. Logan, if I may ask, how are you coping emotionally? I know you've been thrown into a completely unfamiliar place. You seem remarkably composed. She looked at him sideways. Logan gave a low chuckle. Composed, huh? Trust me, inside I'm pretty damn far from calm. But I've had a lot of experience with weird stuff. Time travel, alternate futures, alien invasions, you name it. He gave a small shrug. I'm not sure I ever cope really. I just keep going. There was a raw honesty in that statement that Troy appreciated. Survival, she said. It's something you're very accustomed to. But surviving isn't the same as living, is it? Logan slowed his pace, surprised by the insight. No, it ain't, he muttered. I get by, have a few friends back home that keep me grounded, I guess, but I always end up on my own eventually. The wolf hounding the woods. Troy felt a pang of empathy. The loneliness emanating from him was profound. On the Enterprise, nobody is ever truly alone, she offered gently. It's something we take pride in. Community. Even Worf, our resident solitary wolf, has all of us as his family. Logan smirked. That's so. Big guy doesn't seem the type for group hugs. Troy laughed lightly. Oh, he's not. But he knows we're here for him regardless. That's what family is. Logan fell quiet at the word family. The faces of the X-Men flickered in his mind. Xavier, Jean, Scott, Oro, all of them. They were his family in a way, and he had been ripped away from them. He wondered if they thought him dead. He pushed that thought aside. No use dwelling on what he couldn't change at the moment. Their conversation was interrupted by Worf's voice, suddenly coming over Troy's badge. Worf to Counselor Troy. She tapped it. Troy here. Counselor. Report to the bridge with our guest immediately. We have an unforeseen development, Worf stated, his tone all business. In the background, the urgent beeping of tactical alerts sounded. Troy's eyes widened. Something was wrong. Understood. We're on our way. She looked to Logan, whose posture had already tensed at Worf's tone. Trouble? Logan asked, already sensing the change in atmosphere. Troy nodded. Likely. Let's hurry. They doubled back to the nearest turbo lift. As they boarded, Troy's expression had lost some of its gentle warmth, replaced by the focused concern of an officer rushing to an alert. Bridge, she commanded the lift. As it glided upward, Logan flexed his fingers unconsciously, an old habit when gearing up for a potential fight. Whatever awaited them on the bridge, he had a gut feeling it involved him. Trouble had a way of following Logan, even across dimensions. The turbo lift doors parted to reveal the bridge in a state of high alert. The lighting had shifted to the dim red hue of red alert, and the alert klaxon pulsed in the background. At tactical, Worf was at the ready. Picard stood near the center of the bridge, face grim as he addressed the view screen. On it, dominating the scene,
was the angular visage of a Romulan commander in emerald uniform. Logan stepped out behind Troy, instinctively keeping to the periphery so as not to startle anyone at a station. He took in the situation quickly. The tension on the bridge was thick. Riker stood beside Picard, arms crossed and jaw tight. Data was at ops, hands flying over controls, likely monitoring something. On the screen, the Romulan's dark eyes glinted with equal parts arrogance and curiosity. As I said, Captain Picard, the Romulan on the view screen drawled, continuing a speech already in progress. You are harboring an unknown individual of significant power. In the interest of maintaining the balance of power and treaty obligations, the Romulan Empire insists that you turn this individual over to us for interrogation. Logan instantly understood. They were talking about him. Of course, some neighboring power had caught wind of the anomaly and come sniffing. He quietly moved a step further onto the bridge. The Romulan's gaze shifted, noticing the movement. Ah, and there he is. The commander sneered. The man of the hour. Picard immediately put a protective hand in the air, motioning Logan to hold position behind him. His voice carried the razor-sharp courtesy that only barely masked his simmering anger. Commander, Mr. Logan is a guest under Federation protection. He is not an asset to be claimed. Your demands are out of the question. The Romulan narrowed his eyes. Captain, you know as well as I that anything or anyone coming through a subspace tier could pose a grave security risk. If the Federation has acquired a new, how shall we say, augment or super soldier, it would be a violation of our treaties. Picard's nostrils flared. We have acquired nothing. This man is a castaway far from his home, and we're merely providing humanitarian aid. Logan felt a wave of protectiveness from Picard's words, a rare sensation, having someone stand up for him, rather than distrust him. It was almost disorienting. He watched the screen, studying the Romulan's face, the pointed ears, upswept eyebrows. He looked like a more severe version of Spock, an acquaintance from another life, but with a predatory cunning. Logan's instincts pegged the Romulan as the type of military man he'd encountered in every era and every war. The one who masks threats with politeness and would stab you the moment it's advantageous. Commander Tomalak, for Logan recalled hearing the name uttered by someone on the bridge, allowed a thin smile. Captain Picard, if our positions were reversed, would you not demand the same? The Empire cannot simply ignore the presence of a potentially dangerous being at the Federation's disposal. Perhaps we should invite the good Mr. Logan to speak for himself. Does he wish to seek asylum with the Federation, or is he a threat to all of us? The way Tomalak spoke Logan's name sent a chill of recognition through him, like the Romulan was already imagining how to use him. Logan stepped forward to stand beside Picard before anyone could stop him. He squared his shoulders facing the screen. Listen, pointy ears, he growled, tone insolent enough to cause Riker to wince slightly. I'm not looking to be anyone's weapon or science project, not the Federation's and sure as hell not yours. So why don't you back off? A few bridge officers traded looks of wide-eyed surprise at Logan's blunt provocation. Worf let out what might have been an amused huff under his breath. Klingons appreciated directness. Tomalak's smirk dropped. Clearly he wasn't used to being addressed in such a manner. Certainly.
Not by a lone individual. Charming, the Romulan replied icily. Captain, you will transfer custody of that man to my ship immediately, or we will take action to ensure our security. Picard stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. Commander Tomalak, the Federation does not yield to threats, and I will not hand over a sentient being against his will, especially one who has committed no crime. If you take any aggressive action, it will be you who violates the neutral zone treaties, not us. Tomalak's face hardened. So be it. You have 10 minutes to reconsider, Picard. Tomalak out. The view screen reverted to the exterior starfield, now showing the intimidating sight of a Romulan warbird hovering in close proximity, its green hull shimmering. Picard immediately turned to Worf. Status, Mr. Worf. Worf's fingers danced on his console. The Romulans have raised shields and armed disruptors, sir. They've also activated some kind of scanning beam focused on our hull. Data added from Ops. They appear to be attempting to locate Mr. Logan's biosignature, or perhaps to assess if we have other such individuals aboard. Logan grimaced. He could guess the Romulans would love to scoop up any mutants if they existed here. Thankfully for this universe, they didn't. Riker swore under his breath. They must have picked up the anomaly's aftermath and came to investigate, Captain. Hell of a coincidence. Picard nodded curtly. Indeed. Commander, options, Riker replied. We can try to outrun them, but they have the advantage of position, and their ships are fast. A fight could risk severe damage, and we can't fire first. The unspoken rule hung in the air. Starfleet didn't start conflicts unless absolutely forced. Logan interjected, voice rough but resolute. I'm not gonna let you all get shot up on my account. He stepped closer to Picard and Riker. If it's me they want, maybe I should just go with them. At least then they'll leave you be. His words hung for a second. Troy, who had quietly assumed her post at a side station, suddenly looked at Logan in alarm. Logan, no, I sense no good intentions from them. If you surrender, they will exploit you. Worf rumbled his agreement. They will interrogate or dissect you for secrets. I do not believe Romulans honor hostages. Picard turned to face Logan directly. I appreciate the sentiment, Mr. Logan, but I will not hand you over. That would be a betrayal of everything the Federation stands for. We do not trade lives for safety. There was steel in the captain's voice, and Logan felt a surge of respect. Captain, he said, lowering his tone, I've spent my life protecting others. I can handle whatever those Romulan bastards throw at me. You don't need to risk your crew. Riker shook his head. We're not about to give up a guest to an enemy. Logan, that's not how we do things. Data suddenly looked up from his console. Sir, the Romulans are charging weapons. They are locking disruptors on us. The red alert klaxon continued to pulse, echoing the quickening heartbeat of everyone present. Picard moved back toward the captain's chair. Shields at maximum. Evasive pattern, Theta. Number 1, prepare to return fire if fired upon. He stressed the last part. The Enterprise banked as the helmsman executed evasive maneuvers. On the screen, the warbird loomed. In an emerald flash, it fired a warning shot, a disruptor beam lancing out, grazing the Enterprise's shields with a shudder. They're aiming near our engines, Captain. Next shot may not miss. Worf growled. The deck trembled slightly under Logan's feet, his fists clenched by reflex. So it was going to be a fight after all. He could feel the tension in the crew, the focused fear and determination. It reminded him of standing shoulder to shoulder with the X-Men in a tight spot. And just like then, he felt the surge of adrenaline and the need to act. Picard, Logan said firmly, stepping up next to the captain's chair. There's one thing you should know. I ain't easy to kill. If it comes to a fight, I can board that Romulan ship and take out some of their weapons or crew. I've done it before in other situations. It was a bold suggestion, basically a one-man commando raid. But Logan's demeanor was deadly serious. Riker looked incredulous. You want to what? Board a hostile warbird alone? That's suicide. Worf, however, looked intrigued by the crazy plan. Such daring was not unlike Klingon folklore. Picard frowned, about to object vehemently, but Logan cut him off, voice low. Captain, you've seen what I can do. I got in plenty of places I wasn't supposed to, and made it out. I heal. I fought armies. If it could buy you an advantage, or at least distract them. He trailed off as another disruptor blast rocked the ship.
Console sparked at an aft station. A minor hit. Before Picard could respond, the viewer flickered to life again. Tomalak, looking more menacing. That was but a taste, Captain. The next volley will cripple your warp drive. Will you yield? Picard stood tall. Commander Tomalak, I will not hand over our guest. If you attack, we will respond in kind. Consider your actions carefully. Are you willing to start a war over this? Tomalak sneered. You risk war for the sake of one life. How very Federation of you. Very well. This is on your head, Picard. The channel closed. Immediately, 3 Romulan disruptor beams speared out. The bridge shook violently as the Enterprise's shields flared. Shields holding at 82%. Worf barked, checking damage reports. Return fire. Full phasers. Aim for their forward disruptor array. Riker ordered. Voice hardened. The familiar VR of Federation phasers lanced out at the Warbird, striking its shields in a cascade of light. The battle was on. Logan grabbed onto the rail behind Picard's chair to steady himself as the ship jolted from another hit. He felt a rush. This was a fight he understood, even if it was ships rather than hand-to-hand. But he also felt frustration. Here he was, a weapon on 2 legs, and he couldn't do much in a starship duel. Or could he? The crazy idea he'd pitched swirled in his mind. It went against Picard's rules, and maybe against the Prime Directive, or some regulation about not boarding enemy ships. But Logan wasn't Starfleet. He could break rules they couldn't. He caught Worf's eye across the bridge. The Klingon seemed to read his face and gave a nearly imperceptible nod, one warrior acknowledging another's resolve. Logan made a snap decision. He turned and bolted for the portside turbolift. Troy saw him move and called out, "Logan, what?" But he was already in the lift. The doors hissed shut before anyone could stop him. Picard half-turned, noticing. Where is he going? Bridge to security. Lock onto Mr. Logan's comm badge. But Logan, anticipating that, had already yanked the comm badge off his shirt the second the lift doors closed, letting it clatter to the floor. He knew enough about future tech to realize they could track him with it. In the turbolift, Logan's jaws set in determination. Deck 13, Transporter Room 3. He barked at the computer. The lift sped down. His plan was simple. Beam over to the Romulan ship during a lull or overlap in shields. Getting over was the tricky part. Transporters couldn't penetrate shields. But maybe if the Warbird dropped shields briefly to cool their emitters, or during a close pass, he was gambling that he'd find a window. The lift opened, and he sprinted down the corridor to the transporter room. Inside, Chief O'Brien nearly jumped out of his skin as the door whooshed open, and Logan barged in. "Mr. Logan, what are you?" "No time, Chief," Logan growled, stepping onto the transporter pad. "I need you to beam me onto that Romulan ship." O'Brien's eyes widened. "Are you insane? We can't get a lock through their shields, and Captain Picard has not authorized." Logan cut him off. "Listen, I don't have authorization yet, but you want to save this ship. I'm the best chance you've got. That Warbird's captain thinks Starfleet's soft. Let me give him a surprise." O'Brien hesitated, torn between orders and the dire situation. The ship rocked again from weapons fire, underscoring Logan's point. He tapped the console frantically. "Even if I tried, I'd need them to drop shields momentarily." Wait, sensors showed something. The Warbird's shield grid flickered for half a second as it fired torpedoes, an energy redistribution quirk. O'Brien realized that might be his chance. There's a micro gap when they launch torpedoes, maybe enough to beam one man, but I can't guarantee where on the ship you'll materialize. Logan balled his fists, claws itching to extend. "As long as it ain't solid rock, I'll manage." "Do it." O'Brien's fingers flew over the controls. "This is against all protocol," he muttered, sweat on his brow but energizing. Logan felt the tingling sensation of the transporter. For a split second, his body dematerialized in a swirl of sparkling energy, just as another impact rattled the Enterprise. On the Romulan warbird RRV Cortal, alarms blared as damage reports scrolled over consoles. Commander Tomalak gripped the armrests of his chair, angered that the Enterprise hadn't yielded. "Continue firing. Target their warp core next," he snapped to his tactical officer. The massive D-Deride X-class warbird banked towards the Starfleet vessel, charging weapons for a decisive blow. In a corridor, 2 decks below the bridge, a pillar of shimmering light suddenly appeared near a junction. With a sound of cascading energy, Logan materialized inside the Romulan ship. He had rematerialized in a crouch and immediately pressed himself against the bulkhead. The air was dimmer here, tinted green by the ship's lighting. The distant, muffled sounds of the battle echoed through the metal halls. Logan's abrupt arrival hadn't been noticed yet. He took a sniff. The air was tinged with an unfamiliar electrical smell and a hint of something acrid. But also, he caught the scent of 3 Romulan crewmen just around the corner.
He crept forward, claws, heavens sliding silently out from his hands. The feel of the cool metal between his knuckles, the familiar weight, brought a savage grin to his face. It had been a rough day, but now, he had an outlet. These bastards threatened the wrong ship. Logan sprang around the corner with startling speed. 3 Romulan guards were standing at a panel, perhaps monitoring the battle. They reacted with shock as this foreign, feral figure appeared in their midst. Before they could raise their weapons, Logan was upon them. He struck like a wolverine, indeed, low and vicious. His right-hand claws slashed across the first guard's midsection, tearing through the flimsy armor and dropping the man with a cry. Simultaneously, Logan's left fist drove forward, claws punching into the second guard's weapon arm. The disruptor clattered to the deck as the man screamed. The third guard managed to fire a wild green stun beam that singed the wall behind Logan, missing him as he ducked. Logan whipped around with preternatural agility and headbutted the third guard, then followed with an uppercut that sent the Romulans sprawling. It was over in seconds. 2 were incapacitated. 1 was possibly dead or unconscious from the gut wound. Logan didn't pause to check. He picked up one of the fallen disruptor pistols, sniffing at it. Similar principle to those phases I saw, he thought. He wasn't a great marksman, but he could use this if needed. Still, he preferred his claws up close. The element of surprise was his biggest ally. He had to move quickly before they realized an intruder was aboard. He made his way down the corridor, following signs, helpfully also labeled in English under the Romulan script due to universal translator conventions. He was searching for either the engine room or weapons control, somewhere he could do maximum damage. He found a data port on the wall and punched the console. The UI was alien, but he managed to bring up a schematic of the ship by intuition. The reactor core looked heavily shielded and likely guarded. The weapons array control room was closer, and if he could sabotage their disruptors or torpedoes, the Enterprise might get an edge. That would do. Logan sprinted down the corridor, boots thudding. A pair of Romulan engineers turned a corner ahead, saw him, and one tapped a comm badge, yelling in Romulan. Logan cursed and hurled the stolen disruptor like a throwing knife. It cracked one engineer in the face, knocking him cold. The other bolted down an opposite hall, presumably to summon help or get a weapon. Logan didn't chase. He had to reach weapons control fast now. He could smell more Romulans now, sweat and adrenaline, likely a security team mobilizing. Back on the Enterprise bridge, Worf reported with alarm. "Captain, internal sensors show Logan's comm badge signal is gone from the ship. He may have transported off." Picard's face contorted in disbelief. "What? Where?" Data's hands flew over his console. "Sir, I am reading disruptor fire aboard the Romulan vessel. Internal power surges. It's possible Logan is on their ship," Riker muttered.
That crazy son of a... He actually did it. Picard's heart sank. His first thought was horror that Logan would be captured or killed, and that this would all be for nothing. His second thought, however, was grudging admiration for the man's audacity. There was no time to dwell, as the warbird fired another volley, but this time, only 2 disruptors fired instead of 3. Their ventral disruptor array is offline, Worf announced. Not sure why, Picard gained a glimmer of hope. Perhaps Logan had already effected something. Keep targeting their weapons, Mr. Worf, and hail them, now. Aboard the warbird, Logan found the door to the weapons control room. It was sealed. 2 Romulan security officers had caught up to him, appearing at the end of the corridor with rifles. They shouted in Romulan. Logan snarled and dove into a roll just as emerald beams sizzled past him, scorching the bulkhead. In one fluid motion, he sprang up directly in front of the guards, closing the distance faster than they expected. With feral ferocity, he plunged his claws into the first rifle, cutting it in half and delivering a kick to its wielder's chest. The second guard attempted to backpedal and fire, but Logan swatted the barrel aside with one hand, taking a glancing hit to his shoulder which burned. Ignoring the pain, he drove his other set of claws into the guard's thigh, dropping him howling to the deck. A swift backhand to the head silenced the Romulan. Logan winced and looked at his shoulder, blackened and smoking from the disruptor glancing hit. The wound was already starting to close, charred flesh flaking off as new skin regenerated beneath him. Wikipedia.org. That's gonna hurt later, he thought, but at least it wasn't deep. He turned back to the sealed door. No time for subtlety. He jammed all 6 claws into the seam where the door met the frame and pried. His muscles, enhanced by adrenaline and sheer rage, bulged. With a metallic screech, the reinforced door yielded, partly crumpling. He wedged himself into the gap and forced it apart enough to slip through. Inside the weapons control room, a startled Romulan officer stood at a console, eyes wide at the intruder forcing his way in. The officer went for a sidearm, but Logan pounced across the console bank and knocked him out with a brutal elbow strike. Alarms in the room flashed, a warning that the door breach had been detected. Logan knew he had moments at best. He surveyed the controls targeting systems, power relays for the disruptors and torpedo launchers. It was all Romulan text, but blinking red lights usually meant critical functions. He did what he does best: destroy. He drove his fists into the console, claws shredding circuitry and sparking power conduits. Screens fizzled out. He ripped an entire panel out of the wall, severing cables. The lights flickered as the weapons grid on that side of the ship went dark. On the Enterprise, Worf suddenly exclaimed, "Captain, their main disruptors are offline. Only a few point weapons remain. I'm also reading power failures on their torpedo launchers." Riker pumped a fist. He did it. "Their teeth are pulled, sir." Picard allowed himself a tight smile of relief. "Hail them, now, open channel." Back on the Warbird's bridge, Commander Tomulak was receiving frantic internal reports. An intruder alert, weapons systems failing. He was on his feet, livid. How did he get aboard? Find him, he roared to his subordinates. Just then, his communications officer signaled him, "Sir, an incoming transmission from the Enterprise." Tomulak snarled and gestured to put it on screen. Picard's face appeared, stern and composed. "Commander, I believe you've discovered that my guest is not someone you can easily handle. Your weapons are offline. Your intruder alarms are active. Stand down and cease hostilities now, and we will beam our man back and end this peacefully." Tomulak's pride warred with his survival instincts. He looked at the tactical display, his warbird now vulnerable, and the Enterprise still combat capable. How had it come to this? "This man is a Federation operative. Admit it," he spat, desperate to save face. Picard responded icily. "He is nothing of the sort, but he is under my protection. And right now, he is also in a position to do considerable damage to your ship's interior. Do not doubt that, Commander." As if on cue, one of Tamalak's bridge doors slid open, and 2 injured crewmen were dragged in, victims of Logan's rampage, seeking medical aid. Tamalak's jaw tightened. Before he could answer Picard, another call came through internally. "Security team to bridge. We have the intruder contained." Tamalak's eyes flashed in grim triumph at that news. On the viewer, Picard raised an eyebrow. The Romulan commander stood tall. "It seems your feral pet has been caught, Captain. Perhaps this negotiation will go differently now." Picard's stomach clenched, but he kept his poker face. "I strongly advise you do not harm him. If you do, you will answer for it." Tamalak sneered, motioning to cut the comm. "Empty threats, Picard." The screen blinked off. On the Warbird, Logan had indeed been cornered, contained as the Romulan security reported. After wrecking the weapons control, he had tried to make his way toward what he thought was the transporter room, hoping to improvise an escape. But a squad of 6 Romulan soldiers, armored and armed with heavy stun rifles, had converged on him in a corridor intersection. Logan fought like a demon, taking down 2 more and badly injuring a 3rd, but under a barrage of stun blasts set to maximum, even his healing factor couldn't keep up indefinitely. His nervous system was overwhelmed, muscles spasming as he dropped to one knee. A rifle butt to the face finally dazed him enough that the remaining Romulans managed to slap heavy restraint cuffs on his wrists and ankles. They beat him with palpable anger as they subdued him. Blood trickled from Logan's nose and a cut above his eye, but even those wounds began closing shortly after. The Romulans noticed in fear and awe that this prisoner healed as fast as they could injure him, so they pumped him with enough neurosedative to fell a Nausicaan, jabbing hypos into his neck until he slumped, eyes glassy. Logan's last conscious thought was of failure. He hoped at least he had crippled their weapons enough to help the Enterprise. The security team dragged the limp, but still breathing Logan into a detention area and activated a force field around him. The commander arrived shortly after, looking at the shackled, unconscious figure with contempt and perhaps a hint of respect. "So this is the mighty warrior," Tamalak mused, noticing the various injuries on his own men. "Bind him with our strongest restraints and double the field. I want constant guards." One guard nervously held up Logan's severed bonds. The metal cuffs had been partly torn by his struggles, and the claws had nearly sawed through one. Tamalak's eyes narrowed. "He's already nearly escaped these. Increase sedative dosage. Keep him under." As they administered another dose, Logan's mind swam in darkness. Scattered images of pain from long ago mingled with current sensations. In the delirium of sedation, he flashed back to being bound to a table at Weapon X, adamantium being forced into his bones. The pain, the rage. He let out a subconscious growl even in his stupor, and the Romulan guards stepped back, uneasy, on the Enterprise. The mood was dire. They had lost contact with Logan, and now he was at the mercy of the Romulans. Picard convened a quick huddle of his bridge officers.
"Suggestions?"
"Suggestions?" he asked quietly. Riker looked grim. "We can't just leave him. He saved our necks by taking out their weapons. We owe him one." Worf added, "Captain, request permission to lead a security team to retrieve Mr. Logan. A coordinated transporter strike could get through now that some of their shields are down." Data interjected. "They may have re-raised shields in sections, but with their power grid damaged, we might find a pattern gap to beam directly to their detention area." Picard considered the risks. Beaming an armed team onto a Romulan ship could indeed start a hot war, but leaving Logan was equally intolerable. Troy, quietly, then said, "Captain, I sense something else. Another presence." She concentrated, brow furrowing. It's distant, but there is a new mind, cold and amused. Picard glanced at her, perplexed. Amused by what? Before she could clarify, a brilliant flash of white light flooded the bridge. For a split second, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. When the light cleared, a new figure stood nonchalantly in front of Picard's command chair, dressed not in a Starfleet uniform this time, but in a casual 20th century style leather jacket. Leaning on a cane with an insufferable grin, was the being Picard least wanted to see at this moment. "Q, mon capitaine," Q exclaimed with mock delight. "I leave you alone for one afternoon, and you manage to start a firefight with the Romulans, get a strange new pet, and lose him behind enemy lines. Tease, tease." He waggled a finger, clearly enjoying Picard's irritated scowl. Riker took a step forward. "Q, this is not a good time." Q raised his eyebrows in feigned surprise. "Ah, Commander Riker, always the charmer. But I disagree. This is the perfect time. Things were getting so interesting. I simply had to pop in." Picard's voice was cold. "Q, I don't know how you're involved in this, but if you truly want to help..." Q cut him off, placing a hand to his chest in affront. "Involved? My, I had nothing to do with that little rift that delivered your savage friend. Though I must admit, when I heard through the cosmic grapevine that a certain immortal claw-wielding mutant had tumbled into our universe, I couldn't resist observing. Frankly, Jean-Luc, it's the best entertainment I've had in eons." He conjured a floating tub of popcorn with a snap, tossing a kernel into his mouth. Troy's eyes blazed. "You find this funny? That man's life is in danger." Q sighed dramatically. "Relax, counselor. Of course I find it funny and concerning. That's the beauty of it." Picard stepped right up to Q, anger barely restrained. "Can you retrieve him or not?" Q, "Because if you're not here to help, then be gone. We have work to do." Behind him, Worf muttered, "I can remove him from the bridge, sir," hand twitching near his phaser. Q shot Worf a sidelong look. "Oh please, Klingon, put the toy down. We're all friends here. In fact, I'm feeling magnanimous. I might help you save Logan." But he smiled slyly. "Only after we address the lesson at hand." Picard rolled his eyes. "There's always a lesson with you, isn't there, Q? We don't have time for this." But Q snapped his fingers, and suddenly the bridge scene froze. Time stopped. Riker, Worf, Data all held in mid-motion like statues. Only Picard and Troy could move, along with Q himself. Picard opened his mouth in protest, but Q snapped, "Ah, time out. Picard, now listen. You have a unique situation. A man from a world of constant conflict dropped into your tidy little utopia in progress. I'm curious, what have you learned from him so far?" Troy interjected, voice tight with worry and impatience. "This is not the moment. Logan could be dying." Q waved a hand. "Nonsense. He's not dying. Well, no more than usual. You know that man's healing factor is extraordinary. The Romulans could vivisect him, and he'd bounce back. Though I wouldn't recommend testing that hypothesis." Picard's fists clenched. "Q, if you hurt him..." Q looked genuinely offended. "Me? I wouldn't dream of it. I rather like the man. Rugged, haunted, violent in that je ne sais quoi way. He reminds me a bit of you, Jean-Luc, during your more savage moments. Picard bristled. I am nothing like him. Q smirked. No, both men out of time, carrying deep scars, trying to be better than what the universe made you, perhaps more alike than you'd admit. Picard was taken aback by the unexpectedly poignant remark. Troy regarded Q carefully. Sometimes, hidden in his antics, Q spoke truth. This gave her an idea. Q, if you empathize with Logan even a little, help us reach him. You said there's a lesson. What lesson? Q tossed aside the popcorn, which vanished in midair. The lesson, my empathic friend, is about identity and belonging. Here we have a man who, by all rights, feels he is a monster, an animal trying to live among humans. And here you all are, humans, and android, and Klingon, and Betazoid, trying to be better than animals, striving for higher ideals. So what happens when you put the so-called beast among the saints? Will he drag you down into violence? Or will you lift him up into the light? Will he find that he can belong in a civilized world without losing who he is? I'm dying to know. Picard exchanged a glance with Troy, who spoke softly. We've been trying to show him that he's more than just his rage, that he can control it, use it to protect, rather than destroy, and he has. He protected us. Picard nodded. He sacrificed himself, risked himself at least, to save this ship. That speaks volumes. Q clapped slowly. Yes, exactly what I was hoping to see. Logan may think himself a lone wolf who doesn't belong, but when given a chance, he proved he can fight for something greater, not just against his demons. How very noble. Picard's eyes hardened. If you understand that, Q, then you also see he doesn't deserve whatever torment the Romulans are inflicting on him right now. We need to get him out. Q sighed theatrically. Always on the clock, Picard. Very well. I suppose the curtain has closed on Act 2. Time for the finale. He snapped his fingers again. In an instant, time on the bridge resumed. The crew blinked, momentarily disoriented, that Picard and Troy were now standing in slightly different positions. Picard ignored their confusion and barked, Mr. Worf, beam Mr. Logan directly to sickbay now. Pattern, whatever. Just get him out. Worf was already ahead of him, attempting a lock, but it wasn't Worf's console that did it. In a flash of brilliant light, Wolverine appeared sprawled on the bridge floor, unconscious, bruised and still shackled. The heavy Romulan restraints clattered on the carpet around him, apparently cut clean through, as if by some omnipotent intervention. Troy gasped and knelt beside Logan, checking his pulse. He was breathing. His face had fresh bruises and blood, but even as they looked, some cuts were closing on their own. Worf and Riker rushed over, phasers trained briefly on the shimmering, fading energy around Logan, unsure if something else was coming through, but it was just him. Logan groaned, stirring as Troy gently cradled his head. Logan, you're safe now. You're back. Logan's eyes fluttered open, unfocused. Troy, he mumbled, confused. Then his muscles tensed as memory came flooding. Romulans, being stunned and beaten. He tried to leap up, but Troy and Riker held him down gently.
Easy, easy.
It's over, Riker said. Logan blinked, looking around wildly. He was on the Enterprise bridge. How? Last he remembered, he was in a Romulan cell, sinking into blackness. How? he started, and then he noticed one additional figure standing over him. Q. Logan's instincts kicked in. He sensed something off about this smug stranger.
Go.
Smiled brightly. Hello, Wolverine. I'm Q.
Oh.
Your friendly, omnipotent, interdimensional Deus Ex Machina. I'm Q. I'm Q. He started, and then he noticed one additional figure standing over him.
Key.
Boy. 1 centimeter.
Key.
1 centimeter. 1 centime boy. 1 centimeter. 1 cent. Logan gave Picard a puzzled look from the floor. Picard just sighed and offered Logan a hand up.
Key.
Logan rose shakily, noticing his wounds were already mostly healed. The crew was beaming at him. Riker even patted his shoulder, and Worf gave an approving nod. You made it back, Troy said softly, relief evident in her eyes. Logan managed a half smile. Didn't expect that rescue, but thanks. He flexed, and the last pieces of broken restraint fell off his wrists. On the view screen, Commander Tomalek's face reappeared, now etched with fury and confusion. Picard, what have you done? He barked. Our prisoner. He vanished. Picard stood, regaining his composure fully. Commander, I believe this concludes our engagement. I have my man, and you have your dignity. What little remains intact by my sparing your ship further damage, I suggest you withdraw. Tomalek sputtered, clearly at a loss for how Logan escaped. He noticed the smug-looking Q on the bridge now, and his eyes widened slightly. The Romulans were aware of Q from intelligence reports. This isn't over, Picard. The Romulan Empire will not forget this insult. Picard steeled his expression. Nor will we forget your unprovoked aggression. Withdraw, Commander, before this situation truly gets out of hand. Tomalek glared, then the channel cut. On the tactical screen, the warbird began to cloak and move off. A collective exhale went through the bridge. The tension of battle receded. Picard tapped his comm. Bridge to sickbay. Dr. Crusher. Medical emergency. Actually stand by. He looked at Logan, who despite some remaining bruises looked like he was mending as they watched.
Logan, do you need medical attention? Logan rolled his shoulder and wiped some blood from his lip. I'm okay. Just a few lumps. Nothing that won't heal in a few minutes. Dr. Crusher's voice came through.
Captain, is Mr. Logan back on board?
Picard smiled at the sound of astonishment in her voice.
He is indeed. Doctor!
He appears all right for the moment. We'll bring him down soon for a checkup. Q stretched and yawned. Well, that was exhilarating. I do love a happy ending. Romulans scurrying home, our valiant hero back where he belongs. Logan narrowed his eyes at Q. You yanked me out of there? Q wagged a finger. I helped. Technically, your gallant captain here was about to mount a rescue. I just expedited matters and saved everyone a lot of trouble. Logan's fists clenched. He wasn't sure what to make of this being, but something about Q's patronizing tone rubbed him the wrong way. I don't like being used as a pawn, he growled, intuiting that Q saw him as part of some game. Q chuckled. Oh, you're nobody's pawn, Wolverine. Perhaps a knight. No, a rook, straightforward, smashing through obstacles. In any case, my part in this little drama is done. He eyed Logan up and down. Do try to keep him in one piece, Jean-Luc. He's much more fun with all his limbs attached. Logan bristled, taking a step toward Q, but Picard gently held him back with a hand on his arm. Let him go. He's not worth it, Picard muttered. Q winked at Troy.
blew a kiss to an unamused Worf, and with a flash of light, vanished. The bridge was silent a moment, processing the whirlwind that had just occurred. Riker let out a breath and grinned at Logan. "You, sir, are something else. Remind me never to play poker with you. You take risks that scare even me." Logan snorted. "Did what I had to. Sorry if I caused a mess." Picard shook his head. "You acted bravely, recklessly. Perhaps, but you likely saved all our lives by disabling that warbird." Worf stepped forward, standing at attention. "Captain, I recommend a commendation for Mr. Logan's actions. He fought with honor and courage, at great personal risk." That from Worf was high praise indeed. Logan looked almost embarrassed, scratching the back of his head. I just didn't want those green-blooded bastards to hurt anyone here. Figured I could take it better than your people." Troy softly added, "And you were willing to sacrifice yourself for us. That's not the act of a monster, Logan. That's the act of a hero." Logan blinked, turning away for a moment to hide the emotion that threatened to well up. He had been called many things in life: killer, animal, weapon, but hero was a term he always felt belonged to others, more pure of heart. Hearing it from Troy, with genuine gratitude, stirred something in him. Picard gently touched Logan's shoulder. "Let's get you to sickbay to be sure you're all right. Then perhaps you could use some rest. You've earned it." Logan nodded, suddenly exhausted as the adrenaline drained away. "Yeah, a nap wouldn't hurt." He looked around at these people, these virtual strangers, who now looked at him like one of their own. A warm feeling fought with his usual instinct to put up walls. He managed a half grin. "Thanks all of you." As Riker resumed command, and the crew returned to their stations, the red alert disengaging, Picard guided Logan into the turbo lift with Troy, accompanying. As the doors closed, Logan sighed, leaning against the wall. "Hell of a day, huh?" he muttered. Picard let out a low chuckle, an uncharacteristic sound for the stoic captain. "You could say that, Mr. Logan. I don't think any day on the Enterprise will feel routine after this." Troy smiled. "We're all quite glad you're safe." Logan met her eyes. "I didn't want to let you folks down. You treated me decent. Didn't want you regretting it." Picard looked at Logan with a thoughtful expression. "You know you showed us something today as well. Even when faced with an enemy, you tempered your abilities to serve a higher cause. Not many could do that. Not many would do that." Logan shrugged. "I almost lost it a couple times. If I'd gotten my hands on that Romulan commander." He trailed off. There was still a flicker of anger in him. Troy gently placed a hand on his arm. "But you didn't. You held back when it mattered. You chose to protect rather than just avenge. That's growth, Logan." He wasn't sure how to respond. Feelings of belonging and acceptance swirled in him, unfamiliar and a bit frightening. Thankfully, the lift opened on sickbay, interrupting the heavy conversation. Beverly Crusher fussed over Logan for a good 15 minutes, though he insisted he was fine. A couple of bone-knitting shots, and some dermal regenerator passes, and even the lingering bruises vanished. His healing had already handled the worst. She was astonished, as always, at his body's resilience. "I've removed a number of Romulan nanoprobe toxins from your bloodstream," she noted, scanning him. "They had been trying to sedate you heavily, but your system was breaking them down. Farson.wikipedia.org. Still, I've neutralized the rest." Logan hopped off the biobed, rolling his shoulders. "Appreciate it, Doc." She smiled. "Anytime." And Logan, thank you for what you did. He gave a curt nod, unused to so much praise. Picard and Troy escorted Logan out of sickbay. By now, the adrenaline crash was evident. Logan looked weary. Troy quietly suggested, perhaps some quiet time in the holodeck might do you good. I recall you have a fondness for the wilderness. We have some very realistic nature programs. Logan perked a bit at that idea. A forest simulation. That actually sounds perfect. Need to clear my head. Picard agreed readily. An excellent idea. Counselor, why don't you take him there? I'll join you both shortly after I handle a report to Starfleet about these events. They parted ways, and Troy led Logan to the turbo lift once more. As they headed for the holodeck deck, Troy looked up at the enigmatic man beside her. She could sense a tumult of feelings from him. Pride, confusion, longing, sadness, relief. A complex tapestry. You did something very brave today, she said. But I sense it stirred up a lot in you. Logan sighed. Always does. Violence. It brings out the worst of my memories. I've been through so many fights, lost so many people. He paused. Voice thickening, back in that Romulan cell. When I thought, maybe that was it. Maybe I'd die, or never get free. I was oddly at peace with it. Figured at least I took some of them with me. But then I woke up here, alive, and people giving a damn. That's harder to face in a way. Troy placed a hand over his. Why? She asked gently, as they exited the lift. He looked at her, eyes haunted. Because, when people care, I inevitably let them down, or they get hurt, because of me. I don't belong in happy endings. You know, I'm the scrapper who does the dirty work, so others can live nice lives. His words were matter of fact, but Troy felt the deep pain and self-reproach underneath. They arrived at the holodeck doors. Troy keyed in a program, with a few tweaks. The doors opened to a stunning vista, a dense pine forest at twilight, dappled golden light, filtering through tall trees, a gentle wind rustling the needles. The sound of a distant creek added to the serenity. Logan stepped in, inhaling deeply. The smell of sap and earth hit his keen senses, and his eyes widened slightly. This smells real, he murmured. Troy smiled, following him in. It is real, in its own way. The air, the water, even the breeze, real enough for the senses. It's modeled after the forests of the Pacific Northwest on Earth. Logan walked forward slowly, touching the rough bark of a tree with reverence. It felt like home. One of his many temporary homes, at least. A place where a man could be alone, with his thoughts and the howl of a wolf in the distance. They strolled through the holographic grove. Troy eventually spoke. You do realize, Logan, that you haven't let us down. Quite the opposite. He didn't reply immediately, simply crouching to pick up a pine cone, rolling it in his fingers. She continued. And as for belonging, perhaps you were sent here, however accidentally, not just for us to help you, but for you to find something within yourself. Logan gave a half smile. You talk like your Professor X. You know that. He'd always say stuff like everything happens for a reason. Troy chuckled. From what you mentioned, he sounds like a wise man. Logan took a seat on a fallen log, gazing out at the shafts of light between the trees. In my world, I always struggled with what I am. An animal that learned to be a man, or a man with an animal inside. Xavier tried to teach me I could be both and still be good. I think I finally started getting it when I joined the X-Men. They became my family, gave me a purpose beyond just fighting for the sake of it. Troy nodded, sitting beside him. And here, You continued to live by that purpose. You stood up for us, your new family, if I may be so bold to call us that. Logan didn't object. He realized that yes, in the heat of battle, he had felt that old protective fire, the same he felt for his mutant comrades, sparking for these starship people. That thought made him smile wistfully. You guys, you remind me of them. The team, each so different, yet working together. It's a good thing you have here, something worth protecting. Troy watched a doe and fawn wandering in the holographic distance. We do, and you're part of it, at least for now. You belong here, Logan, as much as any of us. Logan was quiet for a long moment, listening to the simulated breeze. Finally, he admitted in a low voice, "It scares me, feeling like I belong, because whenever I do, it gets ripped away. Either I lose someone, or I lose myself." He held up his hands, looking at the backs where his claws emerged. "These things I've done with these. Sometimes I worry, one day I'll cross a line I can't come back from."
Troy placed a hand on his forearm, gently, "But you haven't. And as long as you can care about others, as long as you can feel this," she tapped lightly over where his heart was, "you won't lose yourself. We all have darkness inside, Logan, even on this ship, in this century. The difference is we help each other keep it at bay, overcome it. You don't have to fight it alone." Logan felt a warmth at her words. He covered her hand with his own rough one. "Thanks, Deanna." He used her first name for the first time, and she smiled brightly in response. Just then, the holodeck doors opened, and Captain Picard walked in quietly, not wishing to intrude. He had changed out of his uniform jacket, appearing more casual as he often did when off duty. He took in the scene of forest tranquility and gave Troy a nod of thanks for facilitating this. Picard approached, and Logan stood up from the log. "Captain." Picard regarded him kindly. "At ease, Logan," he said, with a light tease. "We're both off the clock." He admired the surrounding forest. "This is a fine program. Reminds me of my childhood in the vineyards of France. Oddly, different flora, but the serenity is similar." Logan crossed his arms, not out of defensiveness, but comfort. "It's beautiful. Gotta hand it to your future, getting to enjoy nature without even leaving the ship." Picard stepped closer, face growing more serious. "How are you holding up?" Logan considered. "Honestly, better than I'd expect. A bit sore, but I'll live." Picard and Troy both gave a short laugh at that understatement. Picard then took a breath. "I want you to know, Logan, that I've already spoken to Starfleet Command about what transpired. I will make certain they understand that you were an unwilling traveler, and that you performed a great service to this ship. There may be some political fallout with the Romulans, but that's my burden, not yours." Logan looked down, scuffing a boot in the dirt. "I never meant to drop trouble on your lap, Captain, but I'm glad I could pull my weight." Picard's eyes twinkled slightly. "Pull your weight? You took on an entire Romulan warbird single-handedly. That's more than pulling weight. That's tipping the scales." Logan shrugged with a modest half-smile. Troy added, "He nearly gave Worf a run for his money in the heroism department." Picard chuckled. "Quite, Mr. Worf is already singing your praises to anyone who will listen in 10 forward. I suspect the tale of the wild man of the Enterprise might become something of a legend among the crew." Logan groaned jokingly. "Great, just what I need to become a legend." They shared a light moment. Then Picard's expression softened. "Logan, I know you won't be with us forever. We'll do our best to figure out how to reopen that dimensional rift or otherwise find a pathway to send you home. I have our best people on it." Logan met the captain's gaze. "I appreciate that. A part of me almost hates the idea of leaving, considering how welcome you made me. But I got unfinished business back there. People who need me." Picard nodded solemnly. "Of course. Family." Logan smiled faintly.
Yeah, family. Try stood. If and until that day comes, you have a place here. It might not be an easy adjustment to our way of doing things, but I think you've proven you can handle it. Logan actually laughed, a brief, genuine laugh. I might need to learn to pull punches a bit more, but I'll try. Picard extended his hand. Logan clasped it in a firm shake. Thank you, Captain, for everything. You didn't have to trust me. Many wouldn't have. Picard looked him in the eye. One thing I've learned in my career, Logan, is that trust can sometimes transform even the most unlikely individuals. I had a sense about you, and I'm glad I wasn't wrong. He eyed the claws retracted now, and added with a wry smile. Though I admit, you gave us a few scares along the way. Logan grinned. Story of my life. He inhaled the pine air deeply, feeling a sense of peace creeping in, a rare feeling for him. You know, for the first time in a long while, I feel calm. Must be your shiny Federation ideals rubbing off on me. Try responded. Or perhaps your inner ideals finally having a moment to breathe. Logan gave her an appreciative look. Maybe so. Picard glanced upward as if at the sky. I'd be remiss if I didn't reflect on the moral of all this, as Q so loves to prompt me to do. Logan rolled his eyes at the mention of Q. Picard continued. This experience has reminded me that humanity, or any species, contains multitudes. Even someone who sees himself as a mere weapon or outsider can carry great nobility and compassion within. In our century, we often think we've evolved beyond violence and base instincts, but we must never forget those instincts are part of us. We choose to temper them with wisdom and empathy. You, Logan, showed that choice today in spades. Try added softly, and you've reminded us that sometimes, to protect what we love, we need the strength and courage of that animal side, guided by a good heart. She looked around at the simulated forest. Nature itself is neither good nor evil. It just is. It's how we use our nature that defines morality. You've used yours to be a protector. Logan felt his throat tighten slightly. He wasn't one for big speeches, but these two were speaking to parts of him he usually kept buried. I won't lie, he said, voice rough. I've done things I'm not proud of. Killed when maybe I could have spared. Gave in to rage more times than I can count. But I try to be better. People I care about, like my teen, or folks like you make me want to be better. He toed a pine cone on the ground. One of the hardest things for me is believing I deserve that trust or friendship. I guess I'm still working on that. Picard placed a hand on Logan's shoulder. We all are, my friend. The journey of self-improvement never truly ends. But take it from an old starship captain. You have more than earned a place at our table, for however long you're with us. Logan felt a rare sting of emotion in his eyes, and blinked it away. That means a lot, Jean-Luc. Using Picard's first name was a sign of the genuine respect and camaraderie he'd come to feel. Picard smiled warmly at that. They stood together in silence for a moment, just listening to the forest sounds. The light was slowly dimming as the program simulated dusk. A few stars peeked through the holodeck's fabricated sky, oddly reminding Logan that somewhere out there, beyond even those stars, lay his universe. He wondered if he'd see it again soon, or if fate had other plans. Whatever the case, he felt a sense of acceptance here and now that he would carry with him. Try broke the silence gently. Would you like some time alone here, Logan? We can leave the program running as long as you like. Logan nodded appreciatively. Yeah, I think I'd like that. Feels like a good place to just be, for a while. Picard understood. Very well. We'll be just outside if you need anything. Or tap the comm badge we gave you. He realized Logan wasn't currently wearing one. He'd tossed it earlier. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a new badge he had brought along. Here,
a replacement. Logan took the communicator and, in a gesture that surprised even himself, affixed it to his shirt again with a hint of pride. "I'll hold on to it this time." Try and Picard began to walk back toward the exit. Before they left, Logan called out, "Hey, Jean-Luc, Deanna." They turned. Logan stood bathed in the twilight glow between towering evergreens, a lone yet not lonely figure. "Thank you," he said simply, the gratitude in those two words carrying depths beyond measure. Picard inclined his head, and Try gave a little wave. They departed, the holodeck doors hissing shut, and leaving Logan with the chirp of crickets starting up in the underbrush. Logan took a deep breath and sat back down on the log. He looked up at the artificial stars. Somewhere among them, he imagined his own world's stars twinkling. He wondered what his friends were doing, if they were searching for him or mourning him. "I'll get back, I promise," he whispered to the night. But for now, in this tranquil wood that wasn't entirely real yet felt true, he allowed himself to relax. He listened to the soft hoot of an owl, the gentle gurgle of the holographic stream. He felt the weight of centuries of struggle ease just a bit off his shoulders. In this moment, Logan was not Weapon X, not Wolverine the X-Man, not an outsider freak in a world of ideals. He was just a man under a sky, trying to find his place. And perhaps, he mused, that place could be anywhere, even on a starship in another universe, as long as he kept his heart true. As the holodeck's forest slept under the emerging stars, Logan closed his eyes and let himself drift in the peace he had fought so hard to earn. For tomorrow, whether he sought a way home or remained among these Federation friends, he knew who he was: a survivor, a warrior, and maybe, just maybe, a man who could finally accept a little peace and belonging. In the quiet of the simulated night, James Logan Howlett, the Wolverine, found a moment of rest, a rare and precious thing, aboard the USS Enterprise D.
When it's time, the curtain comes down. He doesn't become a chaos god. On paper, he should be a perfect candidate, towering, terrifying, fire-wreathed, associated with destruction on a mythic scale. If some mortal prophet scratched his silhouette onto a shrine wall and wrote blood flame underneath, cults would form overnight. People would start shouting his name in battle. Skulls would burn extra nicely. But that isn't how godhood works in 40K. Chaos gods are feedback loops. They are made of want, endless, gnawing want. They feed on belief and emotion, grow from it, and then twist reality to generate more of the same. Khorne wants more rage, Slaanesh more excess, Nurgle more acceptance of despair, Tzeentch more change for its own sake. Surtur does not want more of anything. He is too single-purpose, too self-contained. His hunger is not ongoing, it is task-bound. In his own story, his life cycle is simple: awaken, burn, Asgard, die in the doing. There is no and then. After Asgard, he opens a Patreon for more realms. Chaos might feed off what he does. Every roasted world still screams into the warp, but he will never sit on a throne beside them, whispering for more worship. He doesn't care about being remembered. There's no Surtur cult perpetual. There is just the function, end realm, move on. The priests and sorcerers who try to worship him will find their prayers very unsatisfying. Sometimes the fire comes, sometimes it doesn't. It never answers, it never bargains, it never promises. To the warp, he is like a natural disaster with a name. He doesn't become the Imperium's secret weapon, either. The Imperium loves dangerous tools it shouldn't touch. Daemon hosts, xenotech, repurposed Necron artifacts. If you can slap enough purity seals on it, someone will try to point it in a useful direction. Surtur refuses to fit even that abusive relationship. He can't be reasoned with, can't be bribed. You cannot threaten what has already fulfilled its purpose once and is now operating on residual directive. Offer him worlds, souls, glory, absolution. He doesn't care. You could, at best, momentarily trick him into walking in one direction instead of another by dangling something realm-heartish in his path. An especially important shrine world, a sector capital, a blackstone fortress. Amplify its psychic weight, make it shine brighter than the thing next to it, and he may choose that knot of significance to burn first. For a while, desperate strategists across the galaxy will treat him like a cosmic bull, and themselves as slightly suicidal matadors. Throw him a chaos bastion, so he doesn't step on a forge world. Sacrifice a rebellious sector to drag him away from Terra. Light up a Necron tomb system with sacrificial psychic beacons, and hope he sees it as a tastier heart. But these are momentary deflections, not control. He doesn't fix the setting. He doesn't bring peace. He doesn't save anyone. This isn't a crossover where the Marvel character arrives, lays down some cosmic law, and drags the 40K galaxy kicking and screaming into something better. Surtur isn't a reformer. He's not even a villain in the 40K sense, playing the great game for power. He is a discontinuity. What he does is force the galaxy to confront a possibility it hates, that this grind can end, not in victory, not in healing, just in fire. For most of the galaxy's institutions, that is horrifying. The Imperium is a machine built to survive endless war, not to cope with the idea that war might one day stop because there's nothing left. Its entire identity, its theology, its bureaucracy, its daily horror, assumes tomorrow will be worse, but still there. Chaos is built on the same assumption. The gods need mortals to keep suffering, keep wanting, keep spiraling. An outsider who comes in and says, effectively, what if no one gets to keep playing, is bad for business. And yet for some, Surtur's presence lands differently. For broken guardsmen on their 7th and final deployment, huddled in trenches, watching the horizon turn orange, the idea that this is it might feel more like mercy than terror. Not a good death, not a meaningful one, just an end. No more again, no more replacements, no more commissars shouting forwards. For half-mad cultists who have given everything to gods that will never actually deliver the apocalypse they promise. Seeing a fire giant who does not bargain, does not demand endless rights, does not stretch out their torment for centuries, might look like the first honest thing they've ever witnessed. For Eldar, who have seen too much, who remember their empire before it rotted into decadence and exploded into Slanesh, Surtur is a horror and a relief in equal measure. He is the thing they fear for their few remaining heavens, and the thing that deep in the darkest corners of their minds they suspect might be better than spending another 10,000 years failing to outrun she who thirsts. From the Warp's perspective, he's a foreign patch trying to install Ragnarok on a system hard-coded for there is only war. The core loop of 40K is conflict, escalation, catastrophe new, worse status quo repeat. There is no and then the curtain falls. No final showdown meant to end the cycle. Even galactic scale disasters like the Horus Heresy or the Cicatrix Maledictum ultimately serve to set up more centuries of grinding misery. Surtur's code says, at the end of the world put everything in the fire and roll credits. Those two philosophies are fundamentally incompatible. If Surtur's Ragnarok protocol truly took root in the warp, if mortals started to believe in final endings, to desire a true apocalypse rather than an open-ended struggle, it could start to warp the metaphysical landscape in ways even the chaos gods might not enjoy. Imagine a small but growing cult, not of Surtur specifically, but of the idea that there should be an end. That one day, the war should be allowed to stop, not because anyone wins, but because the story is finished. That's dangerous. Not because it's powerful in the traditional sense, but because it undermines the shared assumption that keeps the entire horrific treadmill spinning. From the meta perspective, he's hilarious and terrifying. Hilarious because he exposes how absurd 40k really is. Put a character like Surtur in front of an Inquisitor, a Chaos Lord, and a Necron Overlord, and watch them scramble to reframe their grandiose philosophies around a walking flaming note to all long-term plans. Terrifying, because if you follow his logic to the end, there's nothing left. No grimdark aesthetic, no never-ending factions, just ash. In a world where every faction's grand plan is built on the assumption that the game never really stops, Chaos will always plot, the Imperium will always march, Tyranids will always consume, Necrons will always awaken. Surtur is that one player who walks in late, looks at the board and says, "Why are you all still playing with this? You know how it ends." Then he lights the table on fire, and for one brief, horrifyingly honest moment, the galaxy has to admit, he's not wrong.